Welcome, everyone. Happy summer. It's so nice to see you all. I think, as most of you know, my name is Sarah Hokanson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Vice President and Assistant Provost of all the things, but today
Mhm.
I'm wearing my Research Development hat to support this new requirement from the National Science Foundation around graduate student mentoring plans. While I know that faculty and principal investigators, as I am one, hate additional components to grants that take time and energy, we hope, but both through this presentation and the template that we've developed, that we will make this easier for you. And, putting on my grad affairs hat, this is such a fabulous opportunity to crystallize the great mentoring that happens for our PhD students, building on a requirement that NSF has had for years around postdoctoral scholars. So I'm delighted to welcome you all here, and I'm particularly happy to introduce my colleague Claire, who I'll let both introduce herself and get going with this webinar, who's a newer member of our research development team
Mhm.
with so much expertise to offer. And so I'm just really excited to co-host this webinar today with Claire. And we'll go through some slides at the beginning just to give you an overview of the changes and some of the resources that we have. And then we'll leave plenty of time for your questions. So with that, thanks for joining me, Claire. And I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and get started.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sarah, for that nice introduction. So yeah, as Sarah mentioned, my name is Claire Cordella. I'm the Associate Director of Research Development within the Office of Research under Sarah, within Sarah's vast team. And yes, the research development team as a whole is committed towards, increasing faculty competitiveness for all different sorts of grants. And as part of that, we're committed to sort of keeping track of current changes and then offering templates to hopefully help lighten the burden for faculty when they go and write these grants. So with that, I'll jump right in. A little bit of the agenda Sarah already mentioned, but we're going to go through these new NSF mentoring guidelines that went into effect very recently at the end of May. There's sort of two pillars to it, as you are probably all aware. There's the graduate student mentoring plans, and then also there's guidance on new requirements for individual development plans or IDPs. We're going to go through, I'll be presenting a few slides that I borrowed from an NSF webinar on this topic, but then we're going to weave that in and spend the most time today looking specifically at BU institutional resources that can support grad students and postdocs as part of these mentoring requirements. And then as Sarah also mentioned, we'll leave plenty of time for the Q&A. This is actually not set up as a formal webinar, so you can submit questions in the chat feature as we go along. We've also received the questions that have been submitted as part of registration that I'll address at the end. And just to answer questions that some people have had, we are recording and the slides will be available and emailed to everyone who's registered after the event. Okay, so let me jump right in. This again, as I said, I borrowed just a few of these slides from an NSF Direct webinar on this. So as you may be aware, the main change here is that the NSF is now requiring a mentoring plan for not only postdoctoral researchers, which was longstanding, but now also graduate students that are supported on a project. So let me move right into the specifics of this. So it needs to be submitted as a component of the actual proposal. The one-page limit has not changed. That remains the same. And I'll jump down to this last bullet point specifically. Where you have a project that is supporting both postdocs and graduate students, you're still submitting one plan with the one-page limit applying. And instead, what you need to do is within that one plan, specify how different components of the mentoring are going to be playing out differently for those two types of researchers in different stages of their training.
Okay.
And then you also just, the third bullet point is pretty self-explanatory. Just you must describe the mentoring provided to all trainees supported on the project. And then they give you some examples of what this might entail, but we've sort of tried to make this a lot easier for you by writing a template mentoring plan. that is publicly available. So you can, this actually has a link. So when we send out the slides, you can navigate right to it. You can also find it easily by going to the B proposal library and going into the template documents subfolder there. And you don't need to take a look at it right now, but just know that it's there. It's the idea is to provide you the wording and to summarize all the resources that we're going to talk about today in a more or less one-page format. And then the idea is for you to take from that and make it your own, add what's specific to your lab or your group, etc. So that's sort of how we structured the webinar today as well, is these are the sections that we write about in the template plan. And I'll just go through each one, as you can see them listed here. So these are the kind of the sections that NSF more or less is expecting to see in one of these mentoring plans. I've bolded the sections that we're going to spend more time talking about, just because these are the ones that have more institutional resources to put them. So things like orientation, career counseling, grant proposal preparation, teaching and mentoring skills, and training in RCR. The other ones, of course, you're all doing within your laboratory or within your group. So perhaps they're a little bit more group or discipline specific. So we do have text in there in the template plan for everything, but I'm going to focus today more on these ones that I've bolded here.
And before Claire moves on, I would just highlight that our goal here is to capture the central resources. Clearly, in the schools and colleges, in addition to what your own research group might be doing, there may be school and college specific resources. And I'm thinking specifically in the School of Medicine, where there are robust resources through things like the CTSI and the Faculty Development Office. And even GMS is growing their support for graduate students. So just highlighting that, we can get you part of the way there through the central resources, but you'll still want to be knowledgeable about the local level too.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So diving right in, orientation, this is a pretty straightforward one. I won't spend an incredible amount of time on it. So for graduate students, just be aware that there are school and college-wide orientations that are available to them, as well as program level sessions. For postdocs, there is a monthly virtual postdoc orientation hosted by a Professional Development and Postdoc Affairs office. And that's a great place for postdocs to be learning about, postdoc life at BU, connecting with other postdocs, learning about benefits, employment statuses, etc. So a great resource to encourage your postdocs to attend, and also a good one to write about as well as part of these plans. And we're just going to put it out there that orientation is an ideal time perhaps for the introduction of IDP. So in a couple slides later, I'll talk about the IDP and the NSF requirements around that. But just know that these are all obviously intertwined, and perhaps when you're orienting a postdoc or a grad student to your lab, that's a good time to talk about the IDP, develop an IDP, and then you're just updating it from there. Okay, so jumping into career and professional skill development, of all the areas, this is probably one where we have maybe the most centrally located resources to help you with, and we're proud of the various offerings that we do have. So I'll get into the graduate student offerings first, and at various points I'll sort of pivot to Sarah to provide a little bit more detail about some of these. But the first one is one of our flagship programs called PhD Progression. And again, I've linked to everything such that when you get the slides, you can easily navigate to all these and learn a bit more if you wish. But what PhD Progression is a digital badge micro credentialing platform. So these are becoming increasingly popular, not just for graduate students, but for employees of all different types. And PhD Progression is itself an NSF funded program headed by Sarah, as well as our colleague Sasha Goldman in the PDPA office. And what it encourages students to do is to select these core capacities. You can see what's available. Research skills, teaching skills, career development, as well as some softer skills like management and leadership. And students can select these core capacities that they wish to become more skilled in, and then do various activities and assignments that then earn them a badge or a credential in these capacities that they can then advertise to employers. So quite a useful program that we're proud to offer. We also have more traditional dissertation writing groups, institutes, and retreats. So of course, you're doing what you can to support dissertation writing within the laboratory or group in terms of content, specific feedback, and whatnot. But sometimes it's also helpful to have more central support to help your PhD students who are at that stage in their training and may need some writing time carved out or just some general support to make progress on the dissertation. We also have a limited number of summer internships for students who are looking to broaden their skill set or to gain complementary expertise, or for students who are beginning to explore an alternative career path, perhaps. And professional development grants available as well. This is outside of our PDPA universe and the Office of Research universe, but the Center for Career Development is of course a great resource for all students at BU, and they have some graduate student specific programming available. So this is a great place for PhD students who may be interested in just early stage career exploration outside of academia, for instance. They provide resume and CV review, interview prep, etc. So good general resource for things that you may not have the bandwidth to support within your lab or group. BU libraries too, I'll point out, in addition to all the research skills that they're helping PhD students with, there's also career and professional development. And then I'll loop back to inclusive STEM teaching because I think Sarah will provide a great amount of detail on this great project. But I'll just say that the Center for Teaching and Learning more generally at the university is a great source for workshops on career and professional development for PhD students. So yeah, I'll let Sarah chime in on the Inclusive STEM Teaching Project, which is a really unique initiative that we have to offer.
Yeah, so that's another NSF funded project. It's similar to what will be on the next slide for postdocs, similar to the Postdoc Academy. It's a blended learning opportunity. So there's a massive open online course that's actually not just open to graduate students, but also postdocs and faculty, focused specifically on developing inclusive STEM teaching skills. And then annually, we offer learning community discussions where people at BU who are taking the course online can get together and kind of learn in small groups. And I know the School of Public Health has adopted this project as one of their primary ways of offering teaching development for faculty. And so this remains available to the BU community either in these organized course runs or as a kind of ad hoc course.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so moving on, here's some postdoc specific programming. By far and away the flagship one we have to offer, which is really, really worth having your postdocs look into, is Postdoc Academy. So this is a comprehensive online program built on the core competencies that are put forth by the NPA, or the National Postdoc Association. It's a national collaboration, so based here at BU, led by Sarah, also at Michigan State, UW-Madison, and Northwestern. And it features these asynchronous MOOCs that are available in edX. So 2 of them are succeeding as a postdoc. So for postdocs who are maybe beginning their postdoc or midway through and are looking for skills that can help them make the most of that postdoc time. And then also thinking beyond the postdoc, so building skills for a successful career. And this is targeted for postdoc, regardless of which kind of career path they want to take, whether it be in academia or outside of academia. And having taken this when I was a postdoc here at BU, I can definitely say that it's a great option for very busy postdocs. There's a very low time commitment with a huge payoff in terms of what you learn and what you're able to take away from it. So I'll let Sarah chime in more since she leads this.
I was going to say, now at least I won't appear biased because I have your endorsement, although you
Yes,
report to me, so maybe it still doesn't count.
yeah, I don't know.
I guess what I would say is, again, this is the flexible piece of for postdocs that are looking to meet other postdocs and join a community. We have those in-person discussions, but for those that just want to access the professional development, it's available to them fully online. And while we're on this slide, I would just highlight the work of Pallavi Aswara, who offers, a number of grant writing and career exploration workshops for postdocs, as well as in-person consultations. And I think when developing these sorts of mentoring plans, it's important not just to kind of build on these workshop-driven professional development, but also the key types of mentoring conversations that they can have. And before we move on from the slide, I see Eli's question in the chat. And so what I would say is, so for the Inclusive STEM Teaching Project and the Postdoc Academy, those are available nationwide. So we've had, nearly now, I want to say more than 10,000 postdocs and almost 20,000 faculty and staff and students take the Postdoc Academy and Inclusive STEM Teaching, respectively. So those are resources that we have to offer at BU that can benefit anyone on your grant, whether they're at BU or nationwide or globally. For the PhD progression platform, we actually pay for the number of seats, if you will, within PhD progression and within the Badger Pro platform. So at this time, Badger Pro and the ability to earn the sticker or the badge, if you will, is limited to BU students. But if there are particular badges that we offer that you think would be beneficial to trainees that are across the country, we have the badge content outside of Badger and can give that content to you so that those people can have access to it that way.
Perfect. So yeah, I'll move on. I think Sarah covered everything on that slide. Okay, so the next sort of pillar, experience with grant proposal preparation. So you may be doing a lot of this within your lab or group by having, for instance, students or postdocs contributing to portions of your own grant, which is great and important to write about. And we have some of that language sort of templated into the template plan. But we also have additional resources available. So for both graduate students and postdocs, we have programming from the PDPA. Sarah mentioned our colleague Paula Villaswara, who, for instance, puts on mechanism-specific panels. So she recently put on one for F-32 applicants, for instance, to the NIH. So a great opportunity if you have a trainee who's targeting a specific grant mechanism and wants to learn more. And these are offered live, of course, but also recorded, and those recordings are available sort of through the link that I've sent you through here. So your trainees can look at this at any time and sort of gain the knowledge from those programs. We also, within our Office of Research, specifically, our program is generally geared more towards faculty, but we certainly have certain programs that would be of interest to students and postdocs. For instance, panels and seminars on early career funding could be of particular interest to postdocs who are thinking about career next steps and maybe planning not only what grant they're applying to for the moment, but what they want to do next, et cetera. We also collaborate with both federal and foundation relation offices to coordinate meet the funder events. So these can be federal funder, program officers from NIH or NSF, but also foundation representatives. So it could be, for instance, a representative from the Alzheimer's Association or the Keck Foundation, for instance. And a lot of these funders also have traineeships or fellowships available. So it could very well make sense for a student or postdoc to attend these kinds of events and sort of gain the information there from the representatives who come to campus. I'm also going to highlight the proposal library, which I've already mentioned in the context of this being where the template is currently uploaded. But actually, the main purpose of the proposal library is to house examples of successful grant submissions. And here I've listed just some of the mechanisms that might be relevant to pre and postdocs, but in reality, the proposal library houses successful grant submissions for all different sorts of mechanisms for faculty as well. So it's just a great resource to be aware of in general. And it's a growing resource, so there may be it's voluntary. We ask people to submit their successful applications so we can feature them. So there may be some mechanisms that have more or less or fewer examples, but certainly if you find one a mechanism of interest, either you or your students or postdocs, and we don't have examples, do let us know, and we can try to solicit on your behalf and do our best with that. Okay, let me check the chat here.
I just added the plan, Claire, while
Gotcha.
you were
Yeah,
talking
no,
about it. They could have it.
perfect. Yeah, so you can have it next to you. Okay, so moving on to teaching and mentoring skills. So for both graduate students and postdocs, we have, as Sarah already sort of went into, the Inclusive STEM Teaching Project, again funded by the NSF, and is available through asynchronous online courses. And as I mentioned also before, the Center for Teaching and Learning is a great additional resource. For instance, if you have graduate students who have a teaching requirement as part of the program, or who are becoming graduate assistants for one reason or another and are new to it and looking to gain skills, they can be on the lookout for the graduate assistant program or blog, and sort of that will help them through that transition or that piece of their training. And the CTL also has learning communities on inclusive teaching as well. So many avenues to gain those skills and opportunities to feature them in your mentoring plans. Okay, training in responsible conduct for research. So this should be a fairly straightforward one to both direct your students and postdocs towards, as well as to write about, because it's pretty codified at the university level. So for master's graduate students, there's the requirement for the RCR specific online city training, and the link is there. For doctoral students and postdocs, it's the same requirement for them. So they have to take the RCR online city training as a prerequisite. And then in addition to that, they take a 1-credit non-tuition bearing course that is, again, run by Sarah, as all things seem to be here, which is a 10-week in-person course, meets for 50 minutes a week. And just know that this does very well fulfill all these new NSF requirements, as well as existing NIH requirements. So Sarah, I don't know if you want to add anything else about RCR since you run it.
Yeah, I would just say, and there are, again, some programs, I know chemistry is one of them, where the responsible conduct of research requirements are fulfilled by other courses like Chem 801 and 802. So, clearly if your department is fulfilling RCR in that way, you would want to modify our template to describe that course or that opportunity that's offered locally. And we can also, there are some grants, both NSF and NIH, that require you to share things like syllabi of RCR trainings. We have all of those resources and are more than happy to share those as they're needed.
Perfect. Okay, so moving on to the kind of the second piece of this new NSF guidance, which revolves around IDPs. So in compliance with the CHIPS and Science Act, there's now the requirement for any postdoctoral or graduate students who receive substantial NSF support to have an IDP plan, an IDP in place, and for it to be updated annually. So just a few notes about that. So substantial support they have defined as greater than or equal to 1 person month per year, and that could be in the form of stipend or tuition support. And again, as I mentioned, it must be updated annually. And then there's additionally this certification process by you as the PI that's required in annual and final annual reports. And so what you're certifying is that, yes, any trainee who's receiving substantial support does have an IDP in place, and or that it's been updated annually if that's as appropriate. But you're not uploading. So there was a Q&A in the NSF webinar where someone was asking if you needed to upload these IDPs for individual trainees, and their answer was no, you're not uploading this. That would not be expected in any normal circumstance. Instead, you're just certifying that yes, they exist and they're updated. But obviously you'll want to have your ducks in a row and have those available should anyone ask for them, but that wouldn't be the normal case. Okay, so I think everyone here as PIs is probably well aware of the IDPs, and the benefits of having them, but just in terms of the resources that we can provide to support that, if there already isn't a well-established plan or a plan within your laboratory or group. So for both graduate students and postdocs, we have PDPA hosted IDP workshops that are offered in the fall and also in the spring semester. We also have an IDP template that you're welcome to use linked here. And we acknowledge that there are many, many good resources available for developing these templates, such as My IDP, which is more geared towards STEM folks, as well as Imagine PhD. So that's a little bit more geared towards social sciences or humanities trainees. And then, as always, there may be discipline-specific IDPs, like Chem IDP, that might be most appropriate to your field or discipline. So obviously, you know best and should adapt to that. But the NSF isn't requiring any specific template, just that an IDP be developed and in place and updated. And we're also going to recommend that, given that these should be updated annually, it could be convenient to do this in conjunction with an annual review process that you may already have in place. And for postdocs, at least, we have a BU postdoc policy that mentors must be providing an annual review to each postdoc scholar. So this is a great opportunity to both comply with the NSF guidelines as well as the BU postdoc policy in this case. Okay. All right, so we covered most of the content of what we wanted. We're going to leave the rest of the time for questions, of course, but if anything comes up after the fact, don't hesitate to email either or both of us. And then I'll just highlight a few additional resources before we move on to the questions. So I've linked here to the full NSF proposal and award policies procedures guide, the PAPG, in case you want to get into more detail about any of these requirements. I've also been referencing that I borrowed a couple of slides from this NSF webinar in conjunction with the Council of Graduate Schools in late April. I've put the link to the full recording there in case you're curious. And finally, if you want to learn more, the Council of Graduate Schools is hosting a webinar on the 18th of this month, talking about how the new mentoring requirements can improve your research agenda. So again, might give you some helpful tidbits to be working into these plans potentially. So with that, we'll turn over to questions. I do want to acknowledge that we had a couple of questions come in on the registration form. So one of them, if I'm remembering correctly, is that are there any BU institutional resources that we can put towards these plans? Which is an excellent question and sort of what we structured the presentation around. So hopefully we've answered that one. But do chime in if we want us to get any more specifics. The other was another great question asking from the staff perspective, how can we best support the development of these plans and help faculty with these? And I think from my perspective, I'll echo what Sarah had said earlier, which is that we're giving institutional centrally located resources, of which there are a lot, but there may be more specific local resources available. And I think that's where departmental staff or school or college staff really come into play and could be very helpful in supporting faculty identify these local level resources to access. So with that, I'll stop share and sort of turn it over for any general questions that people might have.
Yeah, and feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. And as we're waiting to generate those questions, I would just add that if there's a resource that you'd like for your students and postdocs or as faculty mentors, executing these plans, please let us know. I mean, we often create things based on the feedback that we get, and we've been really lucky to partner with many great programs, whether it be through helping to teach parts of first-year courses or other types of local level departments or departmental collaborations. We're really open to your feedback on how we can structure our support, both in research development, but also for graduate students and postdocs to meet your needs. So we're also open to that too.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. This is Francesca. Thank you for the information. Do you have any sense that this is going to be applied also to NIH grants coming up or later on, or is this only NSF for now? And what did you hear about?
Yeah, as of now, it is only NSF, but in my general experience over the last 10 years, where one of them does one thing, typically the other follows. So it really wouldn't surprise me if the NIH followed suit shortly after. But at this time, the NIH mentoring plans are limited both to postdocs and training grants. So this could, it could subject to change, but I would say for now, there's no indication they've not made, but it was, it has been a recommendation across many different working groups. So again, and they typically do join up. I mean, there are some differences between the agencies. For example, NIH has a firm in-person requirement for RCR that does not exist in NSF land. So there are some differentiations, but in general, they tend to kind of work together or follow each other in terms of these developments.
Because right now we have to write very, very extensive training plans when you apply for a fellowship, or a pre or postdoctoral F31 or F32 or T3, any of the fellowship. So already we have to come up with a very detailed mentoring plan. But you are saying this is a one page that would go into the main proposal of the PI grant.
That's
for
right.
NSF. Yeah.
That's correct. So if you applied for, a PI grant through one of the divisions and it funded a graduate, it was always true that if it funded a postdoc, you needed this one-page plan. But now if it funds graduate students, it would also require the plan.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary.
Yes, Mary.
Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
It doesn't look like you're on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Is it better now?
Yes. Yeah.
Every time I move from home to work, it forgets everything about my system. Okay. When does this apply retroactively to NSF grants we already have in terms of IDP requirements? No. Okay. So just moving forward.
Oh, now you're muted.
Now I'm muted. Our postdoc policy will apply to all postdocs. So now that that's been updated this summer, we will be rolling out those requirements. So if you had an NSF funded postdoc who doesn't have a career plan, BU is now going to tell you that they need a career plan. But in terms of graduate students, we don't yet have an institutional requirement for career plans. And so it would be on any grants moving forward that these IDPs and mentoring plans would take effect.
I'll add one more while we're waiting for more people to come up with questions. One thing that came up in the NSF webinar is how is it evaluated in the proposal evaluation stage, so that it's evaluated on the broader impacts criterion, just so everyone knows. Any other questions or recommendations, suggestions?
And don't be afraid to consult with us. I've helped review mentoring plans for faculty, or honestly, for these types of training fellowships that Francesca was speaking about all the time. And that is part of our role in research development. So we're more than happy to help. And again, if you're looking for a particular type of resource, and we don't have it at BU, we may be able to point you to other kind of online or nationally based resources to help you. Well, thanks y'all for joining us on a Thursday in June. It's not that sunny today, so I won't say that you're missing very much weather-wise. And this will be recorded, so I know all of your other colleagues who are on summer vacation will be dying to watch this very riveting webinar, and we will distribute that afterwards with the slides. I did put the mentoring plan in the chat, but you are also welcome to navigate to the proposal library. And I would just like to end this with a sales pitch also, that just in general, we're always looking to update the proposal library with successful proposals. So if you recently have had an NSF proposal funded, or any other type of proposal that you feel comfortable sharing behind a Kerberos with other faculty, if for new faculty in particular, this is invaluable to help them get a sense of what a winning proposal looks like from a specific agency. So we also break up proposals in their parts. So if there's a piece of a proposal that you feel comfortable sharing, even if you don't feel comfortable sharing the entire thing, we are very also grateful for even just your proposal pieces, if you're not willing to share the entire proposal. So you can email us about that too. But thanks so much all for coming, and thanks to Claire for your expertise. You did a great job, and I'm so happy to have you on the team, and I wish you all the very best this afternoon.